practice test today. I am Chase. If you haven't been with us before, welcome. If you have been with us before, welcome back. We will get started here in just a second. I'll lead you guys through a short warm-up for those that are taking the practice test today. But can everybody give me a thumbs up when you get into when you see the live stream up here? Can you give me a thumbs up and a hello in the chat, just so I know that you are capable of asking questions if you need to? And then we will get started here in just a second, guys. So again, just say hello in the live chat on the side if you can, and yeah, we will get started here in just a minute. Guys, so just to give you guys some perspective on what we're going to do today, we're going to walk you through a short warm-up for both the SAT and the ACT exams for those that are taking it. Hey, Dylan, what's going on, man? So we're going to walk you guys through a short warm-up for both of those tests. The materials that you'll need for today, what you need in front of you, again, we want to try to simulate this as closely as possible to the real test, right? When you guys go in and take the real thing, it's a different environment. So, if this is the first time you're taking the test, then don't, it's not a requirement to wear a mask. But my guess is now until probably at the end of this school year, you will be required to wear a mask while taking this exam. So it's just something to think about today. Again, I don't want to throw you guys off. I don't want to change everything to this morning. But just like you do, anything else in school, whatever, it's probably likely that if you take the test within this school year that you will have to wear a mask. So that's something definitely to practice with. There's just such a big difference between taking between simulating the real environment where you feel somewhat uncomfortable, stressed, anxious a little bit, versus taking it, at home where you're pretty comfortable and you get up. We'll talk about that and how important it is to simulate the real thing. Because otherwise, when you get into the real environment, it just won't feel the same. You won't be as concentrated if you haven't simulated it before. Again, not 100% necessary to wear a mask today, especially if this is your first practice test. But it is something to consider as you guys continue to take practice tests that between now, again, until the end of this school year, in all likelihood, almost 100%, you will have to wear a mask covering while taking this test at a school. And so you got to keep that in mind while you're trying to simulate this real thing. Okay, so that's the first thing. So just keep that in mind. Again, it doesn't have to happen today, but if for those that feel ready and prepared that you want to try it with the mask on today, then I encourage you to do so. Okay, otherwise, the other things that you need to have ready, you need to have a pencil, you need to have a water bottle, you need to have a snack, so pencil, water bottle, and snack, and you need to make sure that you have a calculator and make sure that it's charged. Okay, so those four things are going to be requirements for every test, SAT, ACT, PSAT, forever. So make sure you have those four things: water bottle, snack, pencil, and a charged calculator. Make sure you have those four things. Again, in terms of simulating the real environment, try to use your real calculator that you use at school, or try to use a real calculator. Using your phone is not going to be something that you're able to do in the real test. So again, for today's purposes, if you forgot your calculator at school, that's fine. But remember, that's just not a real simulation of how it's going to be. So the more comfortable and the more familiar you can be with your real calculator, the one that you use on the real test, the better this is going to be on the real thing, right? And it's, again, the environment is so important, and it's hard for us to simulate the real thing as closely as possible when you're sitting at home. But we want to try our best, right? If it's not perfect, that's fine, because it just can't be perfect. But we want to try to make it as perfect as we can be right now, okay? So can everybody give me a thumbs up if all that makes sense? And can everybody give me a thumbs up if you have everything that I mentioned in front of you now? Okay? Obviously, I want you to have your printed test and printed bubble sheet as well for today, but that's not something you have to worry about on real exam day. But for today, hopefully everybody has their printed test form and printed bubble sheet as well, because, yeah, those are going to be requirements for the real test. Okay, so hopefully everybody has those ready to go. And great, awesome, guys. So again, like I said, try it. If you feel comfortable enough to take it with a mask on, if that's not going to give you added stress or anxiety, I encourage you to try it today, because the whole junior class is going to have to. If you're a sophomore, probably won't have to worry about it as much. By all reports, I think by next school year, everything should be pretty much back to normal. So hopefully, fingers crossed. So if you're a sophomore taking it, then maybe just you don't have to worry about quite as much. But if you're going to be taking it in the real thing in the next 6 months, definitely consider that. And if not today, consider it moving forward. Okay, so guys, for those that have been in our programs before, one of the things that you guys know that I'm adamant about, and for those that haven't been in our programs, you'll hear it today. You'll hear my spiel today. But it is so, so, so important to warm up before this exam. It is so important. Think about if you play a sport, right? Or if you're in a high school play. Not to make this too dramatic, but this test is infinitely more important than any single high school sport athletic event or any play, right? Or any high school musical or any extracurricular that you do. It really is. And again, I don't want to be dramatic about that and add to any stress or anxiety. But instead of making it feel that way, instead we should be like, you know what, that's true, and just embrace it, right? There's some empowerment to the idea that is true, that is a true statement, that it's way more important than any single in terms of your future. Unless you're going to be in the NBA or if you're an unbelievable athlete, then maybe that's not the case. But for the 99.9% of us, that's a true statement. And when you think about that, if you go to a sporting event, you don't just show up at game time and be like, well, I guess I'm going to do this today, right? Or if you're in the play, you don't just show up at the time that you're at the start time and be like, oh, I hope the audience likes this rendition, right? You warm up. You show up an hour early, if not more, to get ready to go for this. And so we have to have that same mentality for this test. Okay, so one of the things that you guys know that I'm adamant about is that you make sure that you warm up. Now, the beauty of this, especially for ACT test takers, because the SAT test takers have the Khan Academy, so that's always nice. But even for SAT test takers, we have written these. All of our current tutors have written these really thick. We have both SAT and ACT tutorials, right? These are like 700-page books that are written by current SAT and ACT tutors. Okay, and the beauty of all this, the reason I bring this up, is because we put all of this on your phone. Okay, so if you guys if you haven't downloaded the Star U app yet, you can access it in the App Store or Google Play, or I'm going to post the link to the desktop version. Right now, I want everybody, the idea is that if you're on your phone, right, in line waiting to go, so you've registered for this exam, you're going to be standing in line waiting to go, and rather than talking to a friend and getting all nervous, being like, oh, I'm going to fail this thing, right? High school wasn't that long ago for me. Right, you can still hang out with your friends. You don't have to be in the corner just like being totally antisocial. But rather than sitting there and getting stressed out and nervous about the test, be doing some practice problems on your phone, right? Try to get ready to go. I encourage you guys to be doing warm-up problems before you get to the exam. Now, again, this can add to some anxiety, right? So I'm going to post this. Here's the link to the desktop version. But if you haven't downloaded and registered for a student account, it's 100% free. It takes 2 seconds. And then when everybody has this open, can you guys give me 2 thumbs up? Give me 2 thumbs up in the chat when you have the app open and ready to go. Again, some of you will take this seriously. Some of you won't. I wouldn't have. Talk about this in our programs, how bad of a student I was. I wouldn't have taken this seriously. I would have showed up, just rolled out of bed, wouldn't have taken this as seriously as I should have. Now, with a test like this, fortunately, I lucked out in some ways. Again, for those that have been in our programs, you know that in some ways I lucked out. I was a big. If you're not a big reader, for example, then make sure you become a big reader. There's plenty of time to be a better reader. You got to read a lot. That was one thing that helped me tremendously. Is that I just naturally love to read, and I still love to read. That helps you so much on this test. Okay, my mom's a math teacher. That I lucked out in that regard. But again, some of you guys will take this seriously, and some of you won't. The ones that do will be ready to go. So if you're taking the SAT or the ACT today, all you have to do, open the app, create a student account. It takes 5 seconds, and it's all 100% free. Then on the home screen, you just click ACT and SAT practice problems. Okay, ACT and SAT practice problems. You say that's okay, just self-study. If you're taking the ACT, I recommend you click ACT English, and then just do a few practice problems. Okay, so you can open up the punctuation chapter, which is a very, very prominent section of both the writing and language SAT and the English ACT. If you're on those sections, go do a few punctuation problems to get yourself in the right mindset to go. Okay, I cannot stress how important this aspect of the exam is. Okay, so make sure that you guys are doing that now. If you're taking the SAT, for the SAT test takers, particularly for those who have prepared for this before, you know that the SAT reading section is pretty difficult. So rather than getting us started with something that's really hard to do, right, the SAT reading section, don't do SAT reading. Instead, go to SAT writing and language, because ideally that's still somewhat similar. So on the top of the screen, you just click SAT, ACT practice lessons, and then do some writing and language, because the grammar section is a lot easier than the reading section on the SAT, but yet you still get some of that reading, right? While you're taking the writing and language section, it's those passages, right? Just like on the ACT English test, you guys get those passages, and you can just be doing some easy warm-up problems before you get started with this thing. I cannot stress how important it is to be doing these things, because just like when you play a sport, right, or just like when you're in the musical or the play, you don't just show up at game time or at showtime and be like, well, this is today, I guess I'm doing this. So if we take it that seriously for something that's way less important realistically for our futures, then we got to be doing the same thing today for the exam. Okay, so we always start with this. We always start with this in our programs. We always start with this in our these practice test discussions. So I want everybody to open the app. Okay, I recommend doing, again, we're both starting with ACT English or SAT writing and language. Those are some really easy problems to get warmed up with. If you haven't done this before, I encourage you to do it in an even larger way. Right, today we're only going to take 5 to 10 minutes just because we have to get going with this live stream, but 5 to 10 minutes to warm up. If you're really realistic, especially if you think you want to test in the 1400 plus or in the 30 plus range for the ACT, and 14 or 1350 plus for the SAT, that is a ridiculously high level. That's the top 5% of all students. That's not to say that many of you can't get there. I'm sure many of you can. But if that's the case, you've got to be taking this as seriously as scoring a 95% on your math final this year. You would take that pretty seriously, and that's how this test has to be doing, right? If you think about your math final, you'd probably be doing practice problems as you're getting ready to, right, in the morning of your math final, continuing to warm up, continuing to remember those things. Okay, guys, so let's take the next 5-10 minutes or so, maybe to the 20 mark. So 7-8 minutes now. Okay, wherever you guys are in the country, we're going to the 20 mark. Okay, and let's take 8 minutes or so to get warmed up. If you get to a problem, if you get done with the punctuation questions, just move on. Right? If you get done with the grammar quiz number 1, that's a good one to do. Okay? If you get done with grammar quiz number 1, just click tap to start at the bottom and just be doing these practice problems as you go. You can be doing these on your phone when you get to the real testing location. So again, rather than stressing out like everybody else is going to do, you're going to be doing practice problems on your phone. So the first time that you see a question on the real thing, you're ready to go. You're amped up. Okay, I got this, right? This isn't the first time question I've seen today. I'm not going to make a simple mistake right off the bat just because I'm stressed and nervous about what I'm about to do. Okay, guys? So you guys are all doing that now. Again, star U. I just posted the link for the desktop version. Okay, and again, guys, we're taking, 6, 7, 8 minutes now. I'm doing some practice problems. Again, if you get done with one section, don't just sit there and do nothing, right? Do another section. Get ready to go. Get in the right mindset, and it will pay off in a huge way, I promise, when you start the test. Stay focused, right? Just like you have to stay focused on the real exam. Stay focused, head down. Don't take these for granted, right? If you miss a question, think about why it is that you got wrong. See, because that same question, I guarantee these questions are all based on real tests. All of our current SAT and ACT tutors are writing these practice questions based on real tests. So I really believe that they're as close to the real thing as possible, and you can do them all on your phone. For ACT test takers, this is huge because there's really not a free resource available for the ACT. If you want to use Khan Academy, that's great as well. But for ACT test takers, this is big. For SAT test takers, I still think the questions are very, very closely related to the real SAT. We look at these questions and we create our own. very, very similarly to what those do. And you can be doing these on your phone as you stand in line. So there's really no reason that we can't continue to improve. So stay focused on these, just like you stay focused on the real test. Okay, another 4 or 5 minutes, guys. You guys are doing great. Okay, 4 or 5 minutes. You're doing great. Continue to stay focused, guys. Keep doing those practice questions. Don't. Three, 4 minutes left. 3, 4 minutes. Keep staying focused, right? You got to be focused for a long time on this test. So doing a short warm up is not shouldn't feel overwhelming in any way. You guys about 2, 3 minutes left. You guys are doing great. Just move on to the next one. If you finished one section, move on to the next one. I'll just throw this in there, guys. For those that are waiting, if you're not taking the practice test today, but you want to ask a few questions after these guys get started with the practice test, then just hang tight. We're going to get started with everybody here in just a second. Two more minutes, guys. Get through one more, right? Keep staying focused. Get through one more section of the practice questions on the app, and then we'll get going. Okay, guys, everybody ready to go? Can you guys say good to go if you're through the warm-up? We're going to talk about one more thing, and you guys can see it on the background of my screen. This is something I really, really want you guys to be considerate of. Okay? This is not so the SAT and the ACT are not a content test. Okay? I want you guys to recognize this, that both of these exams are focus tests. Okay, how do I know that? So again, guys, say good to go if you guys are warmed up. These are focus tests. Okay, and I know that, and we should know that, because they would be, if they wanted to test you on higher level, like if AP Calculus was the way that they wanted to get you into college, then they would just make the AP Calculus exam the test to get into college. But that's not what they're doing. They're giving you this test, which is like punctuation, right? That's a 6th or 7th grade. So 6 years ago, 5 years ago, that's a 6th or 7th grade concept for many of you guys. Okay, and so when we think about that, that means that they couldn't possibly be testing us or worried about content if that's what they're testing us on, right? They couldn't possibly be worried about that. What they're truly worried about, what they're focused on here is focus. Okay, for the best students in the, and I use Harvard as an example only because they're such ridiculously high test scores for that school. But if you want to get to Harvard, you have to realize how stressful that environment is going to be. Now, if you have to take a test amongst all of these really smart students, then you got to figure out a way to get to where you need to be without feeling that anxiety. Okay, because it is going to be a stressful environment, and that's why these tests still remain so important for colleges. There's so many arguments to be made about whether or not the content on the exam is right or wrong, and we could go on for that discussion forever. But if you recognize what they're really trying to do here, and that it's a focus test, right? How long can you stay really, really involved with a hard reading passage or continuing to battle through? That's really what this test is about. And so for those that are taking the ACT, and I'll use the SAT as an example here in a second, what I want you guys to focus on today is answering the number of questions that you need to answer in order to get a certain score, not the other way around. A 30 and a 1600 on this test, just as a little pep talk before we get started here, guys, a 30 and a 1600 on this test, those are arbitrary numbers. Or a 36 rather, right? 36 and 1600. That never in your life, again, never previous to now, have you ever been graded on a 1600 or a 36 scale. And it won't happen again later in life. Maybe there's like one or two examples that I just can't come up with off the top of my head where that's the case, but very, very few and very far between for everyone, right? So rather than thinking about this as if I don't get a 30, right, I'm a failure. If I don't get a 25, right, my goal is a 25, and I just can't get there. I'm struggling with these practice tests. Don't think about it like that. If you think about it that way, you're thinking about how you're doing, right? How am I doing on this test, rather than what you're doing. You're not focused on what you're doing in the moment. You're thinking about how am I going to do, or how am I doing right now. If you instead focus on the number of questions that you need to answer correctly, this is a real ACT scale from the last year. This is the A11 exam, which I don't think anybody's taking. If you think about, okay, on the math section, which I don't love ACT math, right? If that's what your thought is, I need to find 36 questions on this ACT math test that I know how to answer to get my 25. If you want to get to a 30, I got to find 50 questions that I know how to answer. I got to find that number to get to a 30 on the ACT math test. The SAT students, same exact principles apply. On the SAT, it's even easier to think about because every point on the SAT, relatively speaking, is worth 10 points. Every question, rather, on the SAT is worth 10 points. So with SAT test takers, rather than thinking about like, oh, if I don't get a 1400, I don't get into XYZ school, there are 154 questions on the SAT, and the scale is out of 1600, right? So with some simple math here, okay, and before I pull up an SAT scale, with some simple math, if you're taking the SAT today, 1600 divided by 154 is roughly 10 points per question, and that's true, okay? So if you guys are struggling to stay focused at the end of the exam on any of these sections, for those ACT test takers, I'm sure many of you are thinking, the ACT science, I get so overwhelmed, it's just such a long test, and I'm fading during the ACT science section. Put it in your mind that this focus is so important. Because if you want to get a 28 on ACT science, right, you need to get 31 questions right. So if you give up at the 28 question mark, you're just like, oh, I'm done with this. I want to go. I'm so tired. Every question on science at a certain level, after a 25, every question up to a 36 is worth a full point, relatively speaking. It varies. Each scale varies a little bit, but not much. Right? Relatively speaking, we can trust this scale especially, and that's why I use it in these demos, right, is because the A11 test is a pretty good representation for ACT students of what the real scale is going to look like, what your scale today is going to look like. And so when you see something that's difficult today, you can't be thinking, oh, I'm just done with this. I just need to be done with this, right? I'm over it. Instead, think about, okay, how am I on the reading section? How am I going to get 30 questions right? Out of 40, that's only 75% of the test, because if I do that, I get a 27 on the reading section. Can everybody give me 2 thumbs up if that idea makes sense? Don't, and this isn't just for today, going forward, if you're taking these exams, don't look at the exam as a number of points. Look at the exam as the number of questions you want to answer correctly to reach a score. Because then you can be so much more strategic about it. 30 is just an arbitrary score on the ACT. 1350 is just an arbitrary score on the SAT. You've never used that scale before. You've never said to myself, oh, I want to get a 1350 on this, other than with the SAT. So it doesn't help us in any way to think about it that way. On the flip side, every single day in school, you think about, I got to get this number of questions right to get my score on the final. Think about it in the same way, because this score is based on the number of questions answered, just like everything else in your life. The score will come if you focus on what you're doing in the moment. What am I doing? How do I get 36 questions right on the math test so that I can get my 25 on the math section of the ACT? How do I get right? How do I, on these difficult reading passages for the SAT, rather than sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is such a hard passage, instead think to yourself, I gotta battle through this. These are hard passages, but I know that if the student next to me is giving up and I'm not giving up, every single time that student gives up, boom, I got 10 more points on that student. Boom, I got 10 more points on that student. If you think about it that way, if you're a little competitive with it and think, okay, I'm just not gonna give up, then you're going towards what the SAT and the ACT were originally intended to do, which was focus. Okay, Harvard doesn't need to see that you know basic punctuation to get into Harvard. What they do need to see is that you can sit there for 3.5 hours and be extremely focused against everybody else in the country, because that's who you're going to be competing against at the highest levels if you go to Harvard. But that's true of any school, at any level. You got to be focused to get that score. And so that's where you have to have that mind over matter mentality today. And you got to think, how am I going to get these number of questions right? Okay? So the final thing I want to bring up, and then we'll get you guys started with the exam. It is so counterintuitive to think about it this way, but if in any moment today you're feeling overwhelmed, you do have that stressful feeling, one of the things that I love to do, and this is very true of the very first section of these exams, because you're not into it yet, right? Your brain is still kind of, even if you've done some warm-up, unless you've done 30 minutes, 45 minutes of warm-up, your brain's not quite into it as much. I like to sit there, and this is counterintuitive to a timed test because you want to start going and rushing through it. Sit there for 15 seconds when the timer starts today for the ACT English or the SAT reading, or even as you go through the test. If you're feeling overwhelmed, sit there for 15 seconds and take a deep breath. Okay? Anytime you're feeling overwhelmed on this test, take a drink of water, look around for a second, for 15, 30 seconds even, because ultimately from a consistency standpoint, that 30 seconds might cost you a question at the very end of the test, but that's one question. If you start to get frazzled and you're starting, like, you're doing the reading thing, your fingers at the bottom of the page, you don't have no idea what you just read, that's way, way less consistent and way more up in the air in terms of how many questions you could ultimately miss. If you catch yourself in the moment being like, wow, I'm just not focused at all right now, and you sit there for 30 seconds and re-engage thinking about how do I get back to being focused, you'll miss one question at the end. You'll have to guess on that one question, or maybe 2, or even maybe 3, but who cares about those 3? If it means that you get the remaining 40 questions right, that's a huge win for us. Okay, so don't be afraid, even though it's counterintuitive on a timed test, to sit there for a second, take a deep breath, and realize what you're doing, and then re-engage with that focus level. Okay, can everybody give me one final good to go in the chat? One final good to go in the chat, and then we'll get started here. We'll start, I'm going to send out the instructions for the ACT test takers first, and then we'll get started immediately after with SAT test takers. Okay, but one final good to go before we do this, guys. Okay, and I assume most of you guys are starting to type that in here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to post our proctoring video for the ACT test takers first. I'm going to post the ACT proctoring video. What I want ACT test takers to do, and this is very important because I'm going to stay on live right here. I'm going to stay live for the next hour, hour and a half while you guys get started with this. What I want you to do is the proctoring video will guide you with timers on the screen. It will guide you through the entire exam. It will tell you when there's breaks. If you start the proctoring video, you shouldn't pause it for any reason unless prompted by the video. There are breaks throughout the test, so don't feel like you're just going to be sitting there for 3.5 hours, 3 hours. There are breaks throughout the test, but if you really want to simulate this thing as closely to the real thing as possible, don't pause it for any reason. Okay, you're going to have to deal with distractions. If your brother's sitting in the other room yelling, tell him to be quiet and then keep going. Don't pause the video because there are going to be annoying things that happen in the real environment. Kids sitting next to you chewing gum. That's super annoying. Right? Tapping their foot. That's super annoying. You got to be able to battle through those things. Okay, so don't pause the video for any reason until prompted. Okay, otherwise I want you guys to silence me on this live stream, but I want you to keep me open. Put me in another tab, somewhere up in the corner, whatever, so that if you do have a question in the next hour, hour and a half while you're working through this, you can quickly ask it without having to scramble to find me. Okay, the video will probably lead you through most of those things, but I want you to mute this video, right? You can just click no sound, put me up in the corner, and then start this proctoring video that I'm about to post for the ACT test takers. Start that video, and that should guide you through the whole thing. Timers on the screen, everything. Watch that video from start to finish, and it'll be like the real proctoring environment if you follow it all the way through and you don't pause it unless prompted. Okay, so here's to go for ACT test takers. Okay, this is the ACT proctoring video for standard timing. If you've already been approved for accommodations with the ACT, I'm going to post the extended timing video as well for our ACT test takers. Give me 1 second here. The accommodations timing. And otherwise, guys, good luck for ACT test takers. Okay, but again, please keep me open in case you have any questions over the next hour and a half. I'll stay on just to make sure that you guys are working through it, okay? For SAT test takers, hold tight. I'll be started in just a second. If you have extended timing on the ACT, there's the video that you want to click. Again, same rules apply. Make sure that you're watching it all the way through. Mute me, put me up in the corner so that if you have any questions, you can always come back and ask them. I'll stay on for the next hour, hour and a half. Otherwise, ACT test takers, you should be good to go. Good luck, guys. You're gonna crush it. Keep it up. SAT test takers, we'll get you guys started here. Okay. So SAT test takers. SAT test takers, guys, same rules apply for everything I just mentioned. This is the SAT standard timing video that I'm about to post. Okay, mute me if you're taking the SAT, please mute me. Put me up in the corner, okay, so that if you do have any questions over the next hour and a half as you get going, once you get in the rhythm of it, you'll be fine. But if you have any questions, you can quickly ask them, and just like you'd be able to ask a proctor. So I'll be here, and then the proctoring video should lead you through it. So for SAT test takers, here's the standard timing video for the SAT exam. Okay, again, mute me, put me up in the corner, start that video. Don't pause it unless prompted. There'll be timers on the screen. It will lead you through the whole test. Otherwise, SAT test takers, good luck. You guys are going to do great. And yeah, that's for you guys. And if you do have extended timing on the SAT, let me post that video as well. And for anybody that's waiting around here to ask questions, hang tight for 1 more second. And we will get you guys to answer those questions. Okay, guys, so that's the final SAT proctoring video. Again, start it when you guys are ready, and then don't pause it unless prompted with the video. Otherwise, SAT test takers, you guys are good to go as well. Good luck today. You guys are all going to do great. I know it. You did the warm-up. You understand what questions. Take a deep breath if you need to. Otherwise, guys, good luck. We'll see you guys for the next live stream for those that are taking it. Okay, or we'll see you guys in the chat if you have any questions over the next hour. Guys, like I said, I'm going to stay online to answer any questions for those that are taking the test today. If you're not taking the test today, but you do have some questions, just general questions about the SAT or the ACT, feel free to ask those now. And I'm going to mute this video. I'm going to mute me so that I don't distract anybody, and I'll be answering in the chat. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and post those in the chat, and I'll be writing out the answers for those. Okay. If it gets too cumbersome, if too many people are asking questions, maybe I'll turn back on the volume and just answer them as we go. But otherwise, I'm going to turn the volume off and answer them in the chat. Okay, guys, good luck. Thank you for participating today. And yeah, we'll be open to answering questions now. Good luck, guys. Okay, students, it's been about an hour since we officially started the test. It looks like nobody has any questions. Like I said, the videos are pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty easy to proctor them once you start the video. So I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you have a great weekend. If you have any questions for us, as always, if we're on any of our videos, please make sure that you guys comment in the comment section below each video. Our teachers and tutors, including me, will be happy to respond to those. So please make sure you guys do that as you watch each of these videos, including this one. Because of you guys, we've gained a lot of support on the channel. We really appreciate it. Please help spread the word and tell your friends about Star Tutors and the channel. Otherwise, guys, again, I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you guys next time for the next live stream or in the comment section of one of our videos. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.